If you want to be able to buy the most expensive players and open the best packs in FC25, go to u7buy.com to buy your EA FC25 coins. It's cheaper than buying FC points and just as reliable. With their already amazing prices, you can get an extra 6% using promo code Inception at checkout. Hey guys, so listen, man, you guys have been really enjoying the real life football discussions. We could definitely do some more match reactions in the future as well. Maybe we do like a layout of like me commentating on the game as it's happening, the types of substitutions I can maybe see happening, tactic changes, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys want to see that, we could totally do that in the future. But right now, we're just going to be doing a match reaction for Real Madrid versus Osasuna. So listen, man, Real Madrid played really well today. But we do have to mention that individual brilliance from their superstar players were a really, really huge part with how Real Madrid generally performs. Because the way that football goes, guys, is that when you score that first goal, when you score those first two goals, if it's from individual brilliance or if it's from a good team play goal, it doesn't matter because it opens up the play of the game like crazy, right? The team morale goes up. The way you just start playing in general just goes up as well. The momentum just really carries you forward, right? And it's very important to mention this because in the first, I would say 20-25 minutes of the game, pretty basic football. A lot of football games are usually like this. Like teams don't always start off like super hot, right? There's some opportunities from here and there, but the opportunity of Bellingham getting that pass off to Vinny, opening up the game that way was fantastic. But my goodness gracious, Eder Militao getting injured. Bro, nobody even knows who the guy is because look, if I were to remove this, he's not even here yet, right? Asensio. That's not even how you pronounce his name. It's like this. He's not even here, right? Because this young talent, 21-year-old kid with such a fantastic performance, man. This kid just absolutely he was fantastic today, right? I can't even add him in here because he doesn't exist in the player base, right? But we do have him over here on the bench. That's why I have all these little screens open, right? But those initial goals, man, it really opened up the game because when those goals were scored, for how this game generally went out, Osasuna looked like a mid-table team. And they're not a mid-table team this year. Like, they're actually very, very solid. They're the same team that beat Barcelona 4-2 in one of their matches. So this is just how football goes, right? Sometimes you play really conservative and slow. Individual brilliance kind of carries you forward to actually start playing some decent football. So if you guys did not watch the last video of us talking about Real Madrid and the fact that a change is needed, when Real Madrid lined up in the Champions League against AC Milan, Ancelotti lined up the team in a 4-4-2, and right off the bat, I was like, this is just not something that I want to see personally, right? So from this team that you guys see on the screen here, we were talking about many variations of different formations, different tactical things that can happen depending on the personality of players that you have on the pitch. The only main player here that was different was obviously Mendy, with Fran Garcia playing in the team, Vinicius on the left-hand side, Rodrigo on the right-hand side. But the thing that I constantly mentioned in that video was two important things. One is that if Brahim Diaz is in form, fit, he needs to be playing in the team, and I would actually play him on the right-hand side. The only reason why he wasn't consistently added in the team, if you guys watched the video, I explained this, is because he just came back from injury. He started the last two games on the bench, and then he came off of the bench and then started playing, right? So, very unfortunate for Real Madrid today when it came down to the injuries, right? Hopefully the players get better soon because it was really bad injuries for Eder Militao. It was what looked like a bad injury for Rodrigo, right? Like he looked like he was in a lot of pain. But what was interesting is that, and I don't like saying this out loud, but for me personally, the moment that I seen Brahim Diaz go on the pitch for Rodrigo, it already kind of like tickled my brain in the right way football-wise. Not necessarily quality-wise because Rodrigo was actually having like a decent game at first, but I just personally love what Brahim Diaz offers in the Real Madrid team when he is playing. And it was so clear and obvious to see before he got injured. Because what does this man offer you in your team? First of all, he offers you work rates. His work rates is absolutely amazing to have in a team, right? And working off of players like Valverde, like Lucas Vazquez, working off of that right-hand side. It's like I mentioned in this video, you can see I have the arrows on Valverde. Valverde is constantly doing this, right? So having a player like Brahim Diaz, who's going to also offer you that attacking and defensive presence, is amazing, right? So in the team that you guys see here, I can't add Asensio because he's obviously not in the player base. But at some point, when it came down to Rodrigo, we're going to remove him and we're going to put Brahim Diaz on the pitch here. Brahim Diaz was the player that started off on that right-hand side. And man, it was just... I actually think that Brahim Diaz coming back on loan from Milan for Real Madrid is such a good thing for them, because that right-hand side is really well occupied with a player like this. Work rates, build up play in the attack. The way that this guy got involved in all of the attacks for Real Madrid, like, you really seen that difference, right? Because he is the player that is, one, really good with both feet, right? Two, as I mentioned many times, and I mentioned in the last video as well, the work rates of this man is amazing to have for a team, because he's playing for the team, he's playing for the win, right? And you see that with the layoff to Vinicius Jr. scoring basically the sweat goal, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, that work rate is just amazing. And I, like I said, I just love that he's both footed. Like, he's amazing with both feet, and that's amazing to work with in general. So the way that this team was lined up for the first goal, right? This is superstar brilliance from both Bellingham and Vinicius Jr. I kept mentioning in the last video with Bellingham, right? Bellingham is a type of player that is going to play in a more advanced role, pushing forward up the pitch. He was constantly around this general area over here, constantly, right? And in a lot of situations, when Mbappe was not making those runs in behind, Bellingham was basically acting like he acted last year, where he's like the advanced forward, right? Like, he was the guy that was inside the 18-yard box in some situations when it came down to crosses coming inside the 18-yard box and him potentially scoring a header, or, just getting involved in general on the edge of the 18-yard box. That's why, for me, when I initially made this lineup from this video here, it's so important to add players like Camavinga and Valverde in the team because of the work rates that they provide. By the ways, Camavinga in the midfield area, playing down the middle, playing anywhere, because when you don't necessarily only play down the middle, you play anywhere. Oh my goodness gracious, I loved watching him play today, bro. This guy needs to be playing all the time. This guy cannot be on the bench. It's disgusting to see. He needs to consistently be on the pitch. And that was the main thing that I mentioned in the comment section as well, is that Kama needs to start over Chu for these upcoming games. Because Camavinga, bro, this guy is like not just defensively very good, right? But on the attack, on the build-up, he's fantastic to have in the team as well, right? So the balance of the team, with having Bellingham being the player that is going to be in a more advanced role, working off of Vinny, working off of the other attackers, it just makes sense, right? Rodrigo ended up getting injured, right? Brahim Diaz goes on the pitch. Oh man, the build-up play was just really, really fun to watch, right? And again, it's that consistent thing with Valverde of just having that work rate of coming back and going forward, going in the middle, going on the right-hand side. It's amazing, right? And in that video, I mentioned how Valverde is a player that you need to experiment with over on that right-hand side, which Ancelotti did end up doing because of that injury that Vasquez ended up picking up. And what you have with Valverde on that right-hand side is somebody who has the work rate to consistently be in an advanced position, right? And that's what they needed on that right-hand side, because for so many games this season, the right-hand side is just kind of like empty in some cases, right? So when you have a player like this that is playing in a much more advanced role, right? Like in his case, in this game, you can see it especially. Like, he was not even necessarily playing here. He was more so like playing over here, right? A player that's going to be constantly advancing forward on the attack, but has the work rate to transition back as well. So that's why it was a really good... He's a makeshift right back, right? Like, Militao would have probably been that makeshift right back, and then at some point he would have to put Vallejo on the pitch, which is a little bit shaky, right? But that's what would happen, right? Because you would keep Valverde on that right-hand side. If Militao doesn't get injured and Vasquez does, you probably put Militao there, and then you have to put Vallejo on the pitch. Or no, you don't. You put Asensio on the pitch because the balance would still be there. So I don't know what I'm saying, right? I'm thinking with Militao still being injured, basically, right? But like I said, the types of players that you have in this team, this is a really, really well formatted formation. Really, like, for me, this is like their best lineup. It's to have something like this, or depending on the situation of some games or the teams that you're facing, it's to play in some sort of 4-2-3-1 variation, right? But if you play a 4-2-3-1, the types of players that you have to take out to play that 4-2-3-1 is not always worth it, because I love seeing Bellingham play in the midfield position, Camavinga basically being your box-to-box sort of midfielder that's going to offer you a solid defensive presence. And then again, you have that work rate monster in Valverde. I kept saying, like, dude, I will do anything but take Valverde off the pitch. Like, if you have to take off Vasquez and Valverde is not super familiar with playing as a right back, I would still rather do that. And then you just put Modric on the pitch, which is exactly what happened, right? So it was really, really good to see. We have to mention, right, that this is very, very important to say, okay? A couple of different things to talk about. It's tough for Mbappe in his current situation at Real Madrid, because you really see his glimpses of talent when he's actually playing on the left-hand side consistently, right? You see that he is a left-hand side player 100%. Most of the build-up plays that he would do, where, you know, he started off that play behind the midfield line, where he basically does like the chop on the inside, then he runs in, does a couple of dribbles, and can potentially almost score if the guy doesn't foul him in the edge of the 18-yard box. That's how Mbappe is best utilized, right? So at the end of the day, it's a shame to see him as a striker, right? I think that he can, over time, transform himself into a player that can play as a striker, right? Because today, honestly, when you see glimpses of him actually moving on that left-hand side, cutting inside, being tricky to kind of open up the space for people, you know, building up his confidence in that way, that's when he's fantastic to work with. The runs in behind, he needs to do more runs in behind, right? Because there was one specific play where, you know, it was in the beginning of the game where Rodrigo, you know, gets the pass off here to the right-hand side. Brother, there needs to be more runs being made here, right? Way more runs. I don't even know where the people were over here in the situation when Rodrigo made this pass, right? So Mbappe is so quick, and if he times his runs against the defenders, there's potential to score so many different opportunities, right? Because he's just so quick. He has that initial acceleration, and he has that sprint speed to really take off, right? So, you know, a rough situation for him, but I think people are giving him too much flack, because in my opinion, when you see him play, he's playing in an unfamiliar position, right? As I mentioned in the last video, Mbappe benefits off of playing off of someone who is a good build-up play striker, right? So that's why back in the day, you know, he would benefit off of players like Olivier Giroud, right? Olivier Giroud was a really good example of this in the French team. That's why they ended up winning the World Cup, because the way that you can unlock players like Griezmann and Mbappe when you have a player like Giroud up top is fantastic, right? And in this game, you still see that. You still see that in the striker position. When it comes to needing like an actual striker that's going to help you on the build-up play, but also be there for goal-scoring opportunities. But today, you know, Mbappe was better. I think he had a lot of good glimpses of good things today, but like you can tell that it's almost like he doesn't belong there. You know what I'm saying? Like you could just tell, like every situation that he had where he played his best was when he was transitioning from the left-hand side back into the middle, because in those moments, it was Vinny like kind of like over here and Mbappe over here, and then that's how he would kind of like show what he's capable of, basically, right? So very important to mention that stuff. But dude, we have to say, man, this Asensio lad, bro, because Militao gets injured, Asensio goes on the pitch. Brother, what an absolutely brilliant pass. And as I mentioned, right, the arrow is still there. Bellingham is that guy. And I even have the arrows for this video on Bellingham too at some point, right? Look, with Bellingham on the arrow over here, right, where he kind of goes on the inside. Bellingham makes a fantastic run, right? He's just chilling. This guy's just chilling over here, right? Sees the space, but you need to be basically Paul Pogba, man, to make a pass like Asensio did here. It was a brilliant pass. You know, Bellingham gets through on goal. All he has to do is chip the keeper, and it's a really, really good finish, right? So that's already the first two goals that happen within that game, and it's very, very important goals to open up the pitch, okay? So what ends up happening afterwards, right? So Vinicius Jr. and Jude Bellingham end up scoring their opportunities at halftime, right? Lucas Vasquez exits the pitch. Luka Modric enters the pitch because obviously Vasquez has an injury. You're winning by 2 goals. It's not a bad thing for you to experiment and use Valverde on that right-hand side, like we mentioned in this video. I think near the end of the video, I actually end up doing that at some point where I put Valverde on that right-hand side. It was there it is, right? So I have Valverde over here on the right-hand side with this is me if I was playing like a 4-2-3-1, right? But we have Valverde on the right-hand side because he's going to be your makeshift right back at a certain point, right? So we're going to take Vasquez off the pitch here, and we're going to put Valverde here as well, right? So Valverde ended up playing in that right back position. Again, we can't add Asensio because he's not in the database, right? So during that match, Luka Modric enters the pitch, right? So this one is going to be switched out for... we're just going to actually remove him because I don't know how to work this thing just yet. But Modric enters the pitch, and then boom, you have a balance. I was kind of already seeing like Dani Ceballos, right? And I was like, no, let's put Modric on the pitch because Modric. It was such a good thing that they signed Modric for another year because Modric is always going to be a good squad player to have in the team because you're always going to need that balance of someone that's still going to be someone who works hard in the team but can still offer creative avenues for you. Because here's the thing, right? So you take off Valverde, but Valverde still has really, really good work rates to push off the pitch because Valverde was not necessarily, again, playing in the right back position. He was playing in a more advanced role, right? And when you have someone like Modric over here, you can basically do this on a consistent basis because these guys kind of start moving a little bit like this, right? And Valverde can occupy that right-hand side. And then you also have someone like Brahim Diaz who's going to help you out on that build-up play, right? But we're going to be talking about something afterwards, and you guys notice this, as I mentioned in the video as well, that when you have specific players in your team, that's when you can unlock certain teams, right? Because it depends on like how they're lined up and stuff. But it was fantastic to work with this because you have Modric, who's your creative player. You have Bellingham, who's just like, for me, he's just like that crazy attacking and still defensive player in a team. And I personally love to see him play in that center mid role, right? In the 4-3-3, playing in a more advanced role like this is amazing. But the reason why this works is because Camavinga down the middle, wow, right? This is what people want Tchouaméni to be like on a consistent basis, because if you can actually do that, then you could play Camavinga on the left-hand side and Tchouaméni down the middle. But hey, you work with what you got. Camavinga has consistently shown that when he plays really well in those sort of areas. And don't get me wrong, he can have a bad game at some point in the future, but if your squad is lined up a certain way, it's important to have this in the team, right? So as the rest of the game kept going forward, you see that Vinicius Jr. scores another goal. But again, guys, here's a thing to mention. This is off of individual brilliance, because this pass, this brilliant pass that Lunin does on that counterattack is amazing, bro. Absolutely fantastic pass, right? So let's go ahead and just move some of these things over here back to where they were. And Rodrigo over here, Brahim Diaz here. And then this is how it was, right? Brother, this pass was ridiculous, man. Ridiculous, because the transition was basically like this, right? Mbappe was, I don't know, Mbappe was like somewhere over here. But it's insane how Lunin grabs this ball and he just makes an absolutely, like, this is a perfect pass that he ends up making here, right? Perfect pass like this. Vinny Jr., again, Bellingham 2.0, making a fantastic run on the inside there. Collects the ball, keeps it going, dribbles the goalkeeper, left-hand side, easy finish. Those small moments of individual brilliance, like I said, that's the key thing here for this game, right? Is the individual brilliance of players that allowed them to score their opportunities. Fantastic pass by Lunin, like, and he was great today. You know, he was really good on the set pieces, but the pass that he did to Vinicius Jr. was absolutely brilliant, right? And then obviously we have the last goal here where, again, work rates from Brahim Diaz. Insane. I love Brahim Diaz. You guys know, man, in that video, I kept mentioning that if this guy is fit, he needs to be playing for Real Madrid, because before that injury, he was the solution to that right-hand side, right? He really was. The way that he was playing was brilliant. And again, good with both feet, work rates, all that stuff, right? So you create a situation where, again, he's on the pitch, he offers you that work rate, layoff pass to Vinicius Jr. Vinicius Jr. again composed against the goalkeeper and the defender and scores the opportunity that way as well. But the balance is just so good. It really is. The balance it was so good in the team today. Again, I really think that when you have players like Brahim on the pitch, you have players like Camavinga on the pitch, you have players like Bellingham who can play in that advanced role, linking up play between Mbappe, between Vinicius Jr., that's what you need in the team, right? Bellingham is really, really important to have in the squad. He's a fantastic player, really, really good midfielder. Love watching him play, right? And then for the rest of the game, you know, he ends up switching Jude Bellingham off the pitch, which again is a good switch because he could technically, if he wants to, switch to like a 4-2-3-1 variation if he really wants to, but it kind of looked like they were in a way playing like a 4-2-3-1 sometimes, but then sometimes it was like a 4-4-2 as well, because the Jude Bellingham switch is good because Arda Güler is your creative midfielder, right? You could see in certain situations, right, that once Bellingham was off the pitch, right? So we're going to take Bellingham, or we're just going to move him off the pitch here. We're going to move Bellingham off the pitch, right? You have this balance now, right? What's your balance? Your balance is that you have Camavinga, you have Modric, you have Arda Güler, who was basically added. So it was like this, but again, they were kind of transitioning into different things here, right? Because you can see that from the switches that they ended up doing, it was Vinicius Jr. for Endrick and then Arda Güler. So it's good to do this in the last 15 minutes because now you can transition someone like Mbappe over to that left-hand side, and then you have Endrick playing down the middle. But in a lot of situations that I was noticing in this team, it was kind of like this, right? So it was sorry, what am I doing here? So Endrick gets on the pitch. It almost looked like they were playing in some cases like a 4-4-2, right? Where it's like Mbappe would be on that left-hand side, right? You would have Brahim Diaz who would move over on that left-hand side, and then you basically had a team lined up like this. And what did you notice right away, right? When Arda Güler was on the pitch, you notice that Arda Güler is the creative midfielder, and in two different situations, again, because you have Valverde playing in an advanced role, he gets those passes off to him in two different areas. So again, Arda Güler is a fantastic player to have on the pitch, depending on the situation of the game, right? But again, you create a situation here where that right-hand side is covered and covered really well. And then, you know, subbing on Endrick to develop him as a striker that could potentially be great in the future, right, is fantastic because you'll have him essentially occupying this general space here, right? Let me just delete this big circle, right? Just generally being in this space over here, right? Moving around and letting Mbappe basically play on the left-hand side. Mbappe losing the ball when they're winning like 3-0 or 4-0 is not a big deal because it's good to like build up his confidence. Like that's when you can really see that he's a tricky winger. He uses his pace really well, his acceleration well, right? And in my opinion, he still had a solid game, even if he didn't score, regardless of the situation. But again, Arda Güler, right? We have a player here that in that right side, oh, did not mean to do that. In that right-sided area, right? He's on the right-hand side. That's what I'm saying. Like sometimes they were like a 4-4-2, and then sometimes it'd be a 4-2-3-1 where Arda Güler would move into the middle, Endrick would be up top, and then, you know, you would sometimes have Valverde being like the advanced forward, going forward and whatnot, and then Arda Güler kind of moving like this, right? But, you know, right-hand side, 4-4-2 kind of, right? Bam, makes a nice little pass here to Valverde, making that fantastic run over here on that right-hand side, right? And that's why I kept mentioning that it's so good to have Valverde in the team because Valverde is a fantastic squad player. Whether that's the right back position, whether that's the center mid area, you'll always get those consistent work rates out of that man in that spot, right? So it was a really, really well executed plan when it came down to the substitutions at the end of the game and just how Real Madrid generally played. But again, this was a game off of moments, right? Like individual brilliance from players allowed them to score their opportunities. Vinicius Jr., you know, round of applause for him. Hat-trick from the man today, and it was a brilliant hat-trick. All three goals were really, really good. The cut inside for the initial opportunity to the near post strike was clean. Very, very clean opportunity. The second goal, you know, breaking away from the defense from a brilliant pass by Lennon to score a very calm and composed finish against the goalkeeper was brilliant. And then the third one, again, calm and composed from really, really good work rate from Brahim Diaz on a consistent basis with this guy, right? You guys saw him all the time on the defense. That's why I kept saying in that video, I love to work with Brahim Diaz in a starting 11 because this guy is a beast, right? And, you know, it was funny because on social media, when Rodrigo was off the pitch, people are already saying, oh, Endrick needs to be on. Oh, Arda Güler needs to be on. And in the situation of the game, guys, no, man. Brahim Diaz is the guy that makes the most sense. If they need to have someone that is more creative, can split those passes, then you have Arda Güler on the pitch. But in my opinion, you have Arda Güler on the pitch, but you also have Brahim Diaz on the pitch. But if you do that, you remove certain midfielders, you remove certain attackers, and it's not always ideal to do that, right? So for me, I think the substitutions today were well executed. I think Real Madrid had a very solid game. Again, unlocked from individual brilliance, but at the end of the day, 4-0 is a fantastic result against a team who have been performing very well this season, right? Like, Osasuna is not a team to joke around with, and it was just a really, really fun game to watch. So, yeah, I think the lineup was great today. I think even starting with Rodrigo, I thought was perfectly fine, but again, I would prefer Brahim Diaz in that area if he's fit, if he's on form, which, I mean, currently he is. He should probably start the next game, to be honest with you, depending on who they're facing, but yeah, it was a fun watch, man. It was a fun watch. I think they played really well today, and they deserved the victory. It was a great watch to witness. I thought it was really fun. Vinicius Jr. was fun to watch today, man. But dude, it's the Asensio kid, man. Like, you know, the injuries to Eder Militao, the injuries to Rodrigo, you're definitely gonna be seeing these switches more often. But brother, if they get one more center back and they have to put Vallejo on the pitch, I don't know, bro. I don't know. You know what? Hopefully Vallejo comes in clutch, but dude, it's crazy because I'm not familiar with Asensio, right? I'm not familiar with him from the B team because that's where he came from. And he was so solid today, man. And honestly, when you're a big team like Real Madrid and I watch the game, I'm like, oh no, like they're going to put this young kid in, 21 years old from the B team. Anything can happen because honestly, it's kind of like Antonio Silva playing for the Portuguese national team, but like you can tell he's not really ready yet, you know? Like Inacio is that guy that should be starting with Ruben Diaz, right? Like you could tell that when Antonio Silva plays, like there's, in my opinion, better options, but Antonio Silva is still very young, right? So things can develop further. He could turn into a fantastic player. But Asensio, again, I'm not familiar with this guy. So when he was on the pitch, I was like, wow, like positioning was really good. And honestly, I think having a partnership next to Rudiger is really good for Asensio because Rudiger is going to be that guy that's going to really motivate you to do better, right? And help you on the pitch on a consistent basis. Almost like when Van Dijk was the center back with Joe Gomez on a consistent basis, and Van Dijk was basically like being the leader with Joe Gomez for him to perform better too, you know? So it was cool to see. It was really cool to see. But yeah, a good performance from Real Madrid today. People will give Mbappe flack because they just, you know, it's Mbappe at the end of the day. But, you know, I think that considering the circumstances of him playing in an unnatural position, I think today he actually performed pretty decently. He had moments where, you know, he had the giveaways and stuff, of course, but link-up play was a little bit better. Certain things could have happened for him to score some opportunities for sure, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is that your team wins and you guys win convincingly, right? Not because of the score at 4-0, like they could have won convincingly at 2-0. It's just to see how the players have to generally perform. The only main thing that I didn't like today was when Endrick lost the ball on the right-hand side and this guy was just like, and then he's just not going to like defend. I don't like seeing that, especially when you are a fresh new sub and you just got on the pitch. You got to work to get that ball back. Even if they switch it to the other side, you have to initially see that work rate on the right-hand side. Those are the players that have that club instinct to play for the club, play for the badge, and that's what you need to see. You need to be Valverde 2.0, you know? But yeah, a great game. Good performance for Real Madrid. It was a really fun watch. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video today. If you guys want to see any more, you know, breakdown or match reactions in the future, be sure to let me know and we could definitely sort something out in the future as well. So yeah, I'll see you guys for the next video. Peace out, dudes. Love you guys.